Let's not stand on ceremony here, Mr. Wayne. Yeah, shout out to everyone in the chat. What's happening? Doing an early one today. But yes, I'm alive. I'm about. What's happening? I'm in the building. Okay, we got Z388Z, Gary Bowser, Diego, Rizwan, Ricky, the Creative Nerds, Mr. Captain Hook, Liam Ashley, Michael Ortega, Dennis Baktov. I'm assuming you're just using Dennis Baktov's name, and it isn't the Dennis Baktov, very tough journeyman from Eastern Europe. You there? What's up? What's up? Silver Fox in the house. High noon. Yes, yes. Sticky one. Still Devin. Yo, Devin, what's happening, bro? I ain't seen you in the Element group for a minute. Where you been? Restoring upscale. Carl J. Ivan. Phil. Phil says, Ben Eubank Jr. not happening. Is that official? Have you heard that somewhere? El Nino. Big up, big up. James Wood in the house. The kitchen master. Huh? We got Tansa Shinasi. Not sure how to pronounce your name there, bro. No Arsenal, no life. You're not, what team name? Ty. You're not Ty, are you? From Arsenal Fan TV. He should have a name like that. No Arsenal, no life. Dan the Man. Neftali. Big up, big up. Mr. Boxing Today. Oh, wow. Mr. Boxing Today. What's happening, bro? Long time. If that's the Mr. Boxing Today I'm thinking of, over from the United States. Yeah, big up Mr. Boxing Today. That's an old school name right there. George William. Big up. Iron Fist. Okay, somebody else saying the Ben Eubank fight is not happening. Yeah, I saw Sky talking about the Ben Eubank fight, and although Ben Shalom is not involved in it, right, because he don't promote Eubank. Eubank is promoted by Sauerland, right, the company that Sauerland works with now. So even though Eubank's on Sky, Ben Shalom has nothing to do with him. But even Adam Smith was saying he doesn't feel like it's the right time for Eubank versus Ben, and he thinks it needs to be built more. You know, read into that what you will. So, yeah, where are you guys getting this info that the fight's not happening? Afro Soul in the house. What's happening, bro? Myers, yes, yes. We got Test. Iron Fist, greetings. Tanza says, have you seen Eddie and Coogan's latest interview? What are your thoughts? Yeah, I did see it. You'll have to refresh my memory. Which particular points or which particular talking points do you want me to comment on that they went over in that interview? Sultan of Bragamov, what's happening? Maya says, yo, Hatman, Wagwan, good fights this weekend. Chamberlain versus Billum Smith. Yeah, that is a good fight. That is a good fight. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I want to say I'm leaning towards Billum Smith because of the fight being in Bournemouth. If the fight was in London, I'd probably go with Isaac. I think Isaac is slicker and more difficult than Tommy McCarthy for sure. Tommy McCarthy tries to box a little slick, but he's too big and he's a little bit too cumbersome and hittable. Isaac Chamberlain is genuinely a lot slicker than that. And I thought he did quite well in the fight against, what's that guy's name? I forget his name now. Luke Watkins, excuse me. Yeah, I thought he did well against Luke Watkins. That was the last time I watched him, actually. I didn't see his fights on Channel 5, is it? Under Mick Hennessy. He's one of the few people that goes from a major promoter to Mick Hennessy. No disrespect, but normally people start off with Mick Hennessy. I know some other fighters have done it as well. I think James DeGale, didn't he go from Frank Warren to Mick Hennessy? I think that's the route he went, right? He went from Warren to Hennessy, and then he went to Al Haymon PBC. And wasn't he working with Eddie Hearn as well, James DeGale? Eubanks, they also went to Hennessy briefly. Or did they start with Hennessy? I think they started with Hennessy, didn't they? Yeah, they started with Hennessy, and then they went to Frank Warren, and then Eddie Hearn, and then they did their thing. Let me not get sidetracked talking about that. But yeah, where are you guys hearing that the fight is not happening between Ben and Eubank? Where's this information coming from? Be very interested to know. Tebow, my bro. What's happening, Tebow? Good to see you. Callum Hayes, yes, yes. You got Ossie. What it do? Hey, much, bro. Just living good, you know? Stephen T, yes, yes. Matthew Smith. All right, let me skip to the bottom of the chat. I can't get to everybody. Excuse me. David Gold. Bogdandino, of course. Seconds Out 98 says, CBS is a lot bigger and stronger than Chamberlain. However, the footwork advantage Chamberlain has should cause a lot of issues. Yeah, that's what I'm anticipating. I think it's going to be a difficult, tricky fight for Billum Smith. And it's going to be a matter of, I think, Smith's volume versus Chamberlain's maybe better quality punching. That's what I'm anticipating. And so will Billum Smith be able to compensate for the fact that he's maybe getting pinged here and there and struggling to land clean? Will he be able to compensate with just extra volume? So I want to edge towards Billum Smith, but I'm not particularly confident in it. And it's mainly, or at least partly, because of the fact that the fight is in Bournemouth. And by the way, it does look nice down there in Bournemouth, doesn't it? We're not used to UK fights having such picturesque scenery. Normally they're in the O2 or up in Manchester in a big arena somewhere in the middle of a concrete jungle. So having the fight in Bournemouth, they've got a beautiful beach down there, just a very picturesque town. It's a nice look, and it's a nice little switch up. Same Hussein, big up. BMW said, thoughts on Eddie saying Sky overpaid for AJ fight, but yet Shalom saying Sky was not the highest bidder. Yeah, that's interesting. I just saw Ben Shalom say that. I'm not sure what to make of it. Who else was there in the bid? Was it just Sky and DAZN? I heard that BT weren't interested in bidding. Somebody was trying to say that BT weren't bidding because they didn't want to help the competition, because obviously Eddie Hearn and AJ are tied to DAZN long term. So by paying for the fight, they're helping the competition. I don't know how true that is, but that's one thing I've heard. So if Sky didn't put in the highest bid, who did? Was it some other broadcaster that we're not factoring in here? Surely it wasn't ITV. Definitely not Channel 5. In fact, was it Channel 5? No, it can't have been Channel 5. No. Shane Eagle says, Mick Hennessy, the Audi of boxing. Is that an insult to Audi? Louis says, Hatman, who is the best fighter you've seen who looked world-class in the gym, but couldn't, for whatever reason, just put it together on the big stage? Well, if you go to YouTube and type in Mike Tyson, Jesse Ferguson sparring, Ferguson looks so good in some of them sparring sessions against Mike Tyson that you struggle to even believe it's Jesse Ferguson. It definitely is Jesse Ferguson, but he just looks a million times better in sparring than he ever looked in the ring in a pro fight. Much better than he looked in the actual Tyson fight. So, yeah, I remember watching one of those videos of Tyson sparring, and I didn't realize it was Jesse Ferguson at first. And I was thinking, who the hell is that guy? You know, Conor McGregor voice. Who the hell is that guy? Because he was giving Tyson the business in one of the sparring sessions I saw. And that was a prime Tyson. He was giving him the business. I was like, wow, who's that? And then later on, because I think it was Steve Locke who was posting the videos to his channel. And then later on, I spoke to Steve Locke when I still had the Facebook group. And he was like, yeah, that's Jesse Ferguson. And then in subsequent videos that he uploaded of them sparring together, because they sparred together loads, then I realized, oh yeah, it is Jesse Ferguson. You can see his face in certain frames and whatever. So yeah, Jesse Ferguson was a hell of a gym fighter by all accounts, by what I saw in that sparring footage. But he couldn't translate that to the ring. Yeah, he had those good performances against Ray Mercer, but other than that, he just never really translated it at all. Mike says, big up Hatman in chat. Why do you think that Usyk's transition to heavyweight has been more natural, not as detrimental to his body as David Haye? Body type or the slower approach? I think that Usyk, contrary to what some people may believe, is naturally bigger than David Haye. David Haye's not a big guy. David Haye wasn't a big cruiserweight. There was this whole debate I was having with David Haye fans at the time, them saying, oh, he's a heavyweight. And, you know, Haye was coming out of all sorts of rubbish, saying that he was walking around at 235 pounds, rock solid. I mean, come on. You know, I knew that was rubbish. And I knew that David Haye wasn't even a big cruiserweight. David Haye was doing a lot of weights at cruiserweight to get his body mass up, because originally the cruiserweight limit was 190 pounds. And then they raised it to 200 pounds. And David Haye was pumping loads of weights and doing the protein shakes and all that kind of stuff to get his muscle mass up. So, yeah, he was never even a big cruiserweight. He was a guy that had to really bulk up to fill out the 200 pounds. So with Usyk, I just think he's a naturally bigger guy than David Haye. Yeah, I don't think he has to try as hard to get to 215, 220 as David Haye did. So I think that's part of the reason why it's been a more seamless adjustment to the heavyweight division for him. Yeah, and also he is a more well-rounded fighter than David Haye. David Haye at heavyweight was just a guy that circled around the ring and looked for a big right hand. You know, he was pound shop Roy Jones type stuff. People talk about Eubank Jr. being a pound shop Roy Jones. David Haye's style, or the style Adam Booth taught him, or the style that him and Adam Booth developed together, was largely patterned on Roy Jones. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But David Haye, like everybody else who tries to copy Roy Jones, couldn't do a fraction of the things that Roy Jones could do. Yet he still had many of the same vulnerabilities that Roy Jones had. So, and I'm talking about technical vulnerabilities. They also made adjustments and they didn't make some of the mistakes that Roy Jones made, but yeah. So Usyk is a more rounded, versatile fighter than David Haye. He can do so many more things than Haye. He's two-handed. David Haye would throw the odd left hook here and there. He obviously knocked out Derek Chisora with a nice left hook, or at least caused the first knockdown. But David Haye was primarily a right-hand puncher. He would throw a left hook every now and then, but primarily a right-handed puncher. Usyk uses both hands a lot more. He can't hit as hard as David Haye, at least I don't think. But he's just more well-rounded, more technical. I think he's got better footwork. He doesn't fall off balance as much. And these things, of course, help you. They're heavyweight, because the advantage a smaller guy is supposed to have over a big guy is he should have better coordination, better footwork, better balance, and all these kind of things. Whereas with David Haye, he was faster than the big guys, but he weren't necessarily better coordinated. In fact, I don't think he was. Vladimir Klitschko had better footwork, better balance and coordination than David Haye. Yeah. At least when it comes to throwing conventional punches, you know. David Haye would often throw himself off balance in fights. When he launched the big right hand, then he's off balance and all over the place, and he can't come back with a shot a lot of the time. Anyway, got to skip down in the chat. Somebody is giving a super chat. Big up to the creative nerds. Okay. Says react to a vid. The Matrix trilogy beneath. Okay. The Matrix trilogy beneath. Okay. You're saying some stuff there that's probably a bit prickly for YouTube. I might talk about that on the Patreon. But yeah. I'll definitely check out that video. Shout out to the creative nerds for the super chat. Big up. Right Hook Rodney says, Hatman, what are the new generation of heavyweights, or when are the new generation of heavyweights, going to get pushed up? So bored of seeing these recycled, washed up heavyweights topping cards instead of young ones getting pushed. Okay, I guess you're talking about the likes of Derek Chisora still topping cards and whatever. Luke Mora says, Usyk is only 2 inches taller than Haye. Prime Haye would smash White and AJ on the same night. Is that Kieran by any chance, Luke Amora? I'm being sarcastic, excuse me. It's just that I know a guy called Kieran who's the biggest David Haye fan in the world. In fact, he's probably listening. He's in my Element group. He was also used to be in the old Facebook group, and he's like a huge David Haye fan. In the Element group, he calls himself Haye's #1 fanboy. That's how unashamedly fanatical he is about David Haye. But he says stuff like that. I can't agree with you. I think David Haye against Dylan White, maybe I'd favor Haye. But Dylan White took a better shot a few years ago. You know, the Dylan White who fought Lucas Brown and Chisora 2 times, he had a better chin than the Dylan White today. So, bit of a different fight. And as far as David Haye versus AJ, I wouldn't pick David Haye in that fight, to be honest. You know, look, I might be wrong. At the end of the day, the fight is never going to happen, but I wouldn't pick David Haye in that fight. And Usyk and David Haye are the same height, officially. They're both 6'3". But anyway, back to Right Hook Rodney in terms of the young heavyweights not being pushed. Which heavyweights do you mean? Because Joe Joyce, although he's not young, he's still in the contender stage. He hasn't managed to fight for a title yet. He's headlining his own cards. Daniel Dubois headlining his own cards. Or do you mean the matchroom heavyweights? Like Filip Hrgovic? I mean, who else is there? Hughie Fury, he's with Sky and Boxer now. So are we talking about, I don't know, Fabio Wardley? Hasn't he already headlined a card himself? Or maybe he hasn't. There's Fabio Wardley. There's David Adelaide. But these guys are still in the learning stages, particularly Adelaide, right? So are they really going to be headlining their own cards yet? Is there anyone that really is worthy of headlining their own cards yet, of the real young heavyweight prospects coming up? Give me some examples so I can expand more on it. A.22 says, thoughts on Johnny Nelson saying he would beat Usyk? As a fighter, you're going to be confident and you're going to believe in yourself. And that confidence is never really going to leave you. If you've been a world championship level fighter and you've had loads of defenses, you're still going to have that self-belief. So even though Johnny Nelson comes across as the company man and this, that, and the other, inside his ego is still telling him that he can beat this guy and that guy. So I get it. I don't have an issue with Johnny Nelson saying that. Yeah. I don't agree with him, but I don't have an issue with him saying it. You know, he was a world-class cruiserweight during his day, and he's still got the record for the greatest number of defenses at cruiserweight, right? So it is what it is. Iron Fist says, Hay had legit power and speed, very fast hands, a good head movement. I love watching his fights. Yeah, Hay was an exciting fighter, for sure. He was very explosive, and I've always liked explosive fighters. Louis, is that like a play on low life, or I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just genuinely curious. Louis Life, or is that low life? I don't know. Anyway, he says, who is the best journeyman in your opinion? The best I've seen is Emmanuel Augustus. A heavyweight currently, my favorites are Yago Kaladze, Kamil Sokolovsky, and Jerry Forrest. Best journeyman, I think Darnell Boone. When you weigh everything up, Darnell Boone is one of the better journeymen there's been over the past couple of decades because of the fact that he did knock out Adonis Stevenson. He fought Sergey Kovalev twice. The first fight was controversial. Many people feel like Darnell Boone won. Unfortunately, the footage for that fight is nowhere to be found. I haven't seen it myself, but I've read fight reports and I've spoken to people over the years who did see it. And many thought that Kovalev was very fortunate to get the decision. So yeah, Darnell Boone knocked out Stevenson in 2 rounds. He didn't get the nod over Kovalev, although many people feel like he deserved it in the first fight. He dropped Andre Ward. Do you know what I mean? So he was a dangerous journeyman, Darnell Boone, dangerous. But yeah, Emmanuel Augustus, of course, he was very talented, but he liked the reefer a bit much. Emmanuel Augustus, I'm sure he liked the reefer too much. Yago Kaladze, yeah, he's been in some up and down wars, hasn't he, Kaladze? And he's the first guy to drop F.A. Jagber as well. And Sokolovsky, yeah, he's turned over a few prospects. Jerry Forrest has been on some form lately. Most people feel like he beat Michael Hunter. Reality's Voice, evening. Well, not sure where you are in the world, but I guess evening for you, morning for me, afternoon for everybody else. Mac B say, you mean the fat guy who knocked down Wilder? Yes, I've seen it. Now you're thinking of somebody else. You're thinking of Dustin Nichols, Mac B, who was a ginormous guy, like 400 pounds. And he didn't really knock Wilder down. He either steps on Wilder's shoe or he jabs him in the chest and Wilder kind of stumbles over his own feet. It's not really a knockdown. The ref wipes Wilder's gloves off and he goes in and finishes the guy. I don't really count that as a knockdown. And that's not the guy who the other gentleman was talking about. Harold Sconius is the guy who legitimately dropped Wilder. He's a black journeyman who's been around for a very long time. And he legitimately dropped and seriously hurt Deontay Wilder. The footage has been buried by PBC ever since. Hey, shout out to Michael Schiller, all the way over there in Inverness up in Scotland. We got the Scottish crew. I'm not ignoring you, T-Bo. What's happening, bro? I can't get to all the comments. Iron Fist says, Hatman, what do you think about Tim Witherspoon? Watching some of his fights recently, dude was pretty good. Haven't watched many of his fights before versus Mercer. He did very well. Yeah, Tim Witherspoon was a very good fighter. Very good fighter from the 80s. Did well, of course, against Larry Holmes. Didn't have much of an amateur background, so he was really a precocious talent. To do as well as he did against Larry Holmes with such so few amateur fights. And he wasn't some tough street fighter type guy either. He was like a good kid from Philly who had very few amateur fights, turned over pro, was put in against Larry Holmes before he was ready, and gave a very good account of himself. So he was a talented heavyweight, Tim Witherspoon, and perhaps he might have even been a bit of a waste of talent, to be fair. Obviously, he did hold a version of the heavyweight title. He stopped Frank Bruno, but then he also got stopped by Bone Crusher Smith in 1 round in a fight which Tim Witherspoon claims he was paid to take a dive in by Don King. That's what Tim Witherspoon said. And if it's not true, has Tim Witherspoon been sued by Don King? Because that's quite a claim to make, isn't it? We know that Don King's not shy of suing people. And Tim Witherspoon was publicly saying that Don King paid him to take a dive in that Bone Crusher Smith rematch. So you guys make it out what you will. But yeah, he was a underrated fighter, I would say, Witherspoon, and very, very handy on his day. Yamak says, who wins, Hrgovic or Zhang? I gotta go with Hrgovic. I'm sure Zhang has got some power there. We saw in the Jerry Forrest fight, he's got some power there, but I just think he's too slow, too old, and a cheeky person in my Element group said that Zhang looks like I'm trying to think how they worded it. It was funny. They said they look like a street food vendor or something crazy. It cracked me up. You can imagine him in Hong Kong somewhere selling street food. You know them ones with a sweaty apron on, with a grease stained sweaty apron. That's what he looks like. No disrespect. Esoteric Being. I like the name. He says, thoughts on Franklin Ignatius versus Hosea Stewart. Yeah, Hosea Stewart is that enormous guy from Birmingham, right? With he's got boobs like those African women in sounds messed up. The old commercials for like charities sending money to Africa, and they got like the women with the long boobs that are hanging down. Yeah, that's what his boobs are like, bro. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. You get me? I'm just saying. Shout out to Steel Mills Boxing for the live chat. Big up for the live chat, for the super chat. Excuse me. Steel Mills Boxing. Big up. Big up Max for the super chat. He says, fantasy Pretty Boy versus Money May. Who you got? I got Pretty Boy, actually. Yeah, I got Pretty Boy. I think that Mayweather's real prime was probably at 140. Some people would argue 135. I'm going to say 140. Yeah. Even though he didn't stick around at 140 long. Beat the brakes off Gatti and got out of there. Outmatch in the house. Yes, yes. Boxing Brotherhood. Having a post-training meal after 2 hours in the boxing gym. All right? Putting that work in. So I like to see. Make sure you guys check out Outmatch Boxing YouTube channel. Great videos on there. Outmatch is a great orator. One of the best. So check out Outmatch Boxing. Naz says, Hatman, is there anything you miss from the UK now that you've moved away? Not currently. When you are traveling around outside the West, I guess you miss certain things like sometimes you can be impatient if you've been living in a city all your life and then you move to a developing country, right? They call them developing countries now instead of third world countries. And the pace of life is slower, which is cool for me. But when you go into a shop, things are slow. Don't expect express service anywhere. In a shop, in a bank, people take their time. And sometimes that's a good thing. Other times that's really frustrating. Because in the West, it's a bit more snappy, you know? People take their time. Brave Council said, how you finding the digital nomad life? It's a beautiful thing. I highly recommend it. Beautiful thing. Right, I saw another super chat there. This time from D. He said, yes, Hatman, long time. Glad you escaped the nonsense. What are your thoughts on Big Baby Miller's return? Yeah, I saw his 2 return fights, the one he had in Mexico and the more recent one he had in the United States. He's obviously fighting puddings at the moment. And Jarrell Miller is bigger than ever. I think he was like, what was he, 240 or 250? Say 240, 250, 340 or 350 in the first comeback fight and a bit lighter in the second one. So, I mean, he's cartoonishly big, isn't he, Jarrell Miller? I mean, his waist must be what? A similar circumference to the earth? What size trousers does Jarrell Miller take? Like, realistically, what are we saying? Is it in the 50s? 50-inch waist? 52? It's crazy. And it's not just his waist, right? But his legs, his thighs are so big that even if they found trousers, obviously he does wear trousers, but even if they found trousers that are a 48 or something, right? Or a 50, they probably won't fit his thighs because his thighs are literally tree trunk thighs. They say that somebody's got tree trunk legs, but he really does have tree trunk legs like a cow. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Daniel Oscroft says it's got to be a 60-inch waist. It's got to be a 60. It's got to be a 60. It's crazy, bro. Boxing on the edge. You see, you're a good guy to estimate Jarrell Miller's waist because you've seen him in real life a lot of times, right? Boxing on the Edge lives in New York, for those who don't know. And he's been in the boxing gyms in New York for many years. And he's seen Jarrell Miller take people apart in the gym. He's a mean, vicious guy in the gym, which I like. But you've seen him in person, so give us an estimate of how big his waist is. E-Machines is saying 48. I'm saying that's an underestimate. No, actually, no. 48 might be in the ballpark, to be fair. But obviously, his waist is expanding and contracting depending on how heavy he comes in. So let's say, for argument's sake, the comeback fight that he had in Mexico, when he weighed 350, 360, wherever he weighed. How big was his waist for that fight? I'm saying the circumference of the earth. That's what I'm saying. E-Machine said, I heard he made someone cough blood in the gym. Damn. That's crazy. Dalma says, can you read my super chat? Excuse me, bro. Let me check for your super chat. I didn't actually see it there. Scrolling up. Okay, excuse me, Damas. Yes. He says, Hatman, have you ever seen Miguel Contreras fight? He'll be fighting on the Emmanuel Navarrete's card next month. He's an entertaining pressure fighter. I don't think I have. And if I have, I've forgotten his name. In fact, that's another question for Boxing on the Edge because he's a lot more, his memory's a lot better than mine, remembering these fighters. And we've, been in the Element group watching certain fights, and he's been on some of my live streams where we've seen certain fighters in the ring. Maybe he knows whether he'll probably know better if I've seen that guy fight than me. Them ones. In fact, let me type his name in here. Miguel Contreras. I mean, his name definitely rings a bell. What cards has he been on? Let me have a look. Typing it in right now as we speak. Okay. Top Rank, I'm seeing here, but then DAZN Boxing. So he switched sides. 2 years ago, he was with Top Rank. Now with DAZN. Mute the tab here. Let's have a look. Contreras. See, the fight I'm watching here is from July last year. And I don't know who's who yet, because on the little graphic in the corner, you know, where it tells you the color of the trunks that each guy's wearing, I guess it's got the color of the corners, you know, red corner, blue corner, rather than the color of the trunks, because one guy's wearing red, blue, and white trunks, and the other guy's wearing yellow and green trunks. Yet there's no yellow and green next to their names on the little graphic. I don't know who's who yet. Guess I have to fast forward and see who wins. And presumably that's Contreras. Oh, wow. Okay. He knocks this guy into the next universe. I'm assuming he's Dominican, right? That's why he's got the red, blue, and white. Oh, wow. That was a hell of a knockout. That kind of reminds me of Michael Nunn when he knocked out Sambu Kalambe. If you haven't seen the Michael Nunn Sambu Kalambe knockout, is very similar to that. Kalambe gets iced. He's horrible. And Michael Nunn weren't even that kind of puncher. I mean, he had some power, of course, but he weren't known as a one-punch knockout man. But tell that to Sambu Kalambe. In fact, he might still be asleep now from that punch. Now, he did fight several people after that, but yeah, that was similar to the Sambu Kalambe knockout. Very nice shot. SMB, shout out for the super chat. SMB, I'm going to get to your super chat just now. He says, Hatman, what is your best build-up to a fight? Oh, God, there's been so many fights I've seen over the years. The best build-up to a fight. I really have to put my thinking cap on and think about that one, because there's been so many fights that I've seen, so many great build-ups. I mean, to be fair, Chisora Hay was a good build-up because of the brawl in Germany. That was a good build-up. But yeah, racking my brain to go back to the 90s. See, the thing is, in the 90s, you didn't really see that much of the build-ups because there was no internet, you know, in the 80s and 90s. So obviously they had their build-up shows if it was Sky. But when it was like ITV, they didn't do as much build-up as Sky would later on go on to do. There wouldn't be that much coverage. They might have like 1 or 2 build-up shows, that's it. And then the fight's on. A lot of the build-up would take place in the newspapers. Back in the 90s when fights were on ITV. It would be all in the newspapers, all the back and forth in the newspapers. So that's a good question. I don't want to just give any old answer. So I'd really have to think about that one. But that's a good question because there's been so many great build-ups over the years, you know? And in fact, the build-ups in the internet age are probably better. That's the point I wanted to make because, again, there are loads more interviews now and the video clips can get everywhere and go viral. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot more coverage of the build-ups during the internet age than there was prior to that. I mean, Mike Tyson build-ups were usually fun. Like the build-up to the Razor Ruddock rematch. There was that interview where Tyson's got these like dark glasses on, yeah, and he's talking to Razor Ruddock, who's in the studio via satellite link. And you know how Mike Tyson was always saying crazy stuff, and he said to Razor Ruddock, he said he was going to make him his girlfriend. Tyson was saying all kind of wild stuff. Said he was going to make Ruddock his girlfriend. He's going to make him kiss him with a big lip. All kind of suspect stuff, you know. But that's not the first nor the last time that Mike Tyson said stuff that was highly suspect. But it was funny. Yeah, the stuff he was saying to Razor Ruddock was funny, and it was so out there that Ruddock didn't even know how to respond at one point. Like the camera cut to Ruddock's face, and he was just like dumbfounded by by the stuff that Mike Tyson was saying to him. Crazy. AOK says, British boxing seems on the decline at the moment. Really can't see where the next superstar is coming from. Last decade has been fun, though. I think you make a good point, but there are some guys on the way up. I think David Adelaide, with time, could be an interesting fighter in the heavyweight division because he's very well coordinated. He's fast. He's in shape. He obviously needs a lot of seasoning because he's still green now. But I think Adelaide has a lot of potential. He's also very confident, which is something you want to see, you know, naturally confident. So I'm keeping an eye on David Adelaide in terms of the heavyweight division. But it's going to be, you know, the next generation of heavyweights, who's it going to be? Jared Anderson, right? He's going to be one of the top heavyweights. I guess you have to say Daniel Dubois, David Adelaide. These guys could turn into stars. Do you know what I mean? Because when the Tyson Furies and the AJs and all these guys are gone, and Joe Joyce, he's not going to be around for too long, even though he's fresh. What is he, 36? But I definitely see where you're coming from. You know, you don't see the obvious star in the making right now the way that you saw with AJ. But then again, Tyson Fury wasn't an obvious star in the making. There was people that believed in him from early on, yes. But if you'd watched the first Fury McDermott fight, you would have been hard pressed to predict that that guy would go on to be the number one heavyweight in the division. Do you know what I mean? Like, he didn't look a dead cert for stardom at that stage. So I think we need to be careful not to underestimate people, myself included. All right, let me scroll down here. Louis Mensa says Mitch Green. I guess you mean for the best journeyman. Yeah, Mitch Green was real tough. Crazy as hell. Very tough. I actually saw a video because there was, a few years ago, there were people trying to say that Mitch Green had turned to God. You see Mike Tyson here. People, the Mike Tyson fans seem to think that he's really deep and intellectual. I was cringing when he did that podcast episode with Graham Hancock, because Graham Hancock's level of intellect is like 3,000 times higher than Mike Tyson's on a bad day. So watching those two try to have a conversation was just so cringe to me. I couldn't watch more than a couple minutes. But yeah, Mike Tyson even didn't realize that Mitch Green hasn't turned to God, because there was some video floating around of a different guy called Mitch Green, who obviously isn't the Mitch Green because he looks nothing like him. But people were convinced that, oh yeah, there's this video of Mitch Green talking about God and, you know, rare. That's not Mitch. That's not the boxer Mitch Green. That's somebody else. Yeah. And more recently, I saw a video of Mitch Green, the real Mitch Green, the boxer Mitch Green, and a young Teofimo Lopez. I think he was a young Lopez, like from a few years ago. That is the Mitch Green who fought Mike Tyson. And he don't look much different to how he looked when he fought Tyson. He's still wearing the Kangos, and I think he's still got a Jerry curl. You know them ones. So, yeah, Mitch Green crazy as hell, but very tough. A very tough man. But then again, you know, you look back at some of his fights, like the Tyson fight, the one in the ring I'm talking about, and you wonder whether he was actually high. I mean, because we know he had substance issues. He used to do all kind of stuff, crack and angel dust and whatever. And the testing protocol back then weren't anything like it is today. So you do wonder whether he was high as a kite. I'm not saying he was. I just wonder whether he was, on stimulants. Hey, big up G-Man for the super chat. G-Man's got the bag, people. So if ever you're over in Ireland, you know where to go for free drinks. I'm joking. Tebow says Johnny Nelson was a guy who went from journeyman to world champion. I don't think he sees anyone beat him. I get what you're saying. Nelson went from the very bottom, like Drake started from the bottom. Now he really started from the bottom as an absolute journeyman who people were saying ain't going to go anywhere, and he became the top champion in his division. So the way that he developed his not just skills but self-belief has probably led him to a stage now where he feels like maybe he's the best cruiserweight ever. He wanted to fight David Haye for a long time as well, by the way. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he was calling David Haye out. He was like, yeah, he'd love to come out of retirement and fight David Haye. Yeah. And shout out to Steel Mills Boxing for the $5 super chat. Love the astute analysis. My guy, big ups from Omaha, Nebraska. Hey, big up all the crew out there in Nebraska. Excuse me, Omaha, excuse me. That's Terrence Crawford's town. Omaha, Nebraska. Okay. Excuse my eyesight. Omaha, Nebraska in the house. Bud Crawford territory. Boxing on the Edge says, big up Hatman, I know the African commercial you're talking about. Yeah, there was loads of commercials like that back in the days. Those charity commercials with the little African kids and the flies are on their face and stuff like that, and the woman with the long flat boobs. That's how that guy's. Anyway, move on. Okay, George William Gordon says, fantasy fight Randall Tex Cobb versus Marius Wack. Interesting fight. Two very tough guys. Tex Cobb was a good actor as well. He had a good acting career after his boxing career was finished. Larry Holmes famously said that his hands couldn't take the abuse because I think they asked him if he'd fight Tex Cobb again. And he said, I don't think my hands could take the abuse. Tex Cobb was a real tough guy. Real tough guy. I would probably pick. I might pick Marius Wack on the size, Outmatch says, Miller versus Hosea Stewart, battle of the guys who need a boomerang to put their belts on. Crazy. All right, I'm way behind on the comments here, people. There's a lot of comments coming in. Matt says Jarrell Miller needs a tailored ring. Never mind tailored clothes. He needs a tailored ring. Reinforced. Hey, shout out to Chris Andre. Boxing Brotherhood in the place. He says Jarrell Miller doesn't wear shirts. He wears gazebos. Yes. Not even Wendy houses. He has to wear a whole gazebo. Can't even get away with a Wendy. Maybe when he was 270, you could have got away with a Wendy house. Hey, that's a good question, Crazy D3. And shout out to Chris Andre for the super chat. Crazy D3 says, does Jarrell Miller do road work? I don't know how his joints would hold up. That's a great question. Because my joints have always given me jip. And I'm not even anywhere close to Jarrell Miller's weight. Yeah? I'm a respectable size. I'm not somebody with a big Santa belly or anything like that. I'm in reasonable shape. And even when I was in real good shape, ripped, 226, 227, ripped, shredded. Even then, if I did too much running and stuff like that, my knees would be killing me. It'd be murder. So how a guy like Jarrell Miller, over 300 pounds, could do road work? I mean, maybe he's one of those guys that just injects himself as a matter of course every day, putting the painkillers in his knees before every road work session. Some guys are crazy like that. They have no respect for their own body. Yeah. And they'll just pump it full of whatever they need. Yeah, big up Mark K. Enjoy your beer, sir. Glad to have you locked in. Stephen O, big up. Okay. Black Panther says, and shout out to Black Panther for the super chat. He says, in fact, who's this other super chat from? Okay, this is from Michael Buffer. That sounds like a posh Michael Buffer. He says, did you see the interview where the guy that interviewed AJ on JD Sports said AJ team removed parts of the vid? Oh, wow. Scripted AJ must have said something. Nah, I didn't hear that. I'm surprised that that guy, because those JD Sports interviewers, they're so, how can I describe them? They're so mild-mannered. I wouldn't think they'd even come out their mouth and say something like that. Maybe I've been underestimating them. Wow. An interview where the guy said that he interviewed AJ and JD Sports and AJ's team removed parts of the video. That's very interesting. But anyway, Black Panther said, do you think Teddy Atlas could have been a good fit for Anthony Joshua given his motivational approach? Very possibly, yes. Yes, because I think AJ's a guy who needs to be programmed. And I think Atlas is very good at programming people because Teddy Atlas comes from the Customado school of teaching. And Customado would program his fighters, like robots. Yeah, like that. He would program them. Mike Tyson has talked about this, that he programmed Tyson to the extent that if D'Amato told him bite, Tyson would bite. So it's funny talking about biting with Mike Tyson, but that's how Tyson described it. He described himself as being like a dog, and he was completely under D'Amato's control. Just like a drill sergeant controls the privates. Shout out to Adam Fulks for the super chat. He says, prime for prime, Morales versus Marquez. I'm going to go with Marquez. Yeah, I'm going to go with Marquez. Chris Andre says, Paulie versus Brody was Paulie versus Brody was a great build-up. That's a good shout, Chris. Paulie with my dime piece and the side piece. Yeah, that was actually really funny. Yeah, Paulie and Broder was good. That was definitely a good build-up, for sure. Oh, of course. See, how can I see? This is why I need man like Chris Andre in the chat to remind me of all the stuff I've forgotten about. How could I forget? Froch versus Groves, one of the classic build-ups. Classic. A pull and a push. Both build-ups were great for different reasons. Groves was winding Froch up in the build-up to the first fight, and then the tables were turned in the build-up to the second fight. So yeah, both were highly entertaining. At Cronny's 101, shout out for the super chat. He says, "Hi Hatman, the infamous sparring session when Lennox sparred Tyson and Tyson knocked Lennox out the ring. What evidence do we have for this?" Well, in Lennox Lewis' autobiography, the first autobiography that he wrote, I think this came out in the early 90s, mid 90s. And it's got Lennox Lewis on the front when he still had the flat top. And he's got the WBC belt. I had that autobiography. And in there, he talks about the sparring session and he shows the photo of whatever. I don't think I can't remember if he said that Tyson knocked him out the ring, but he definitely said that Tyson got the better of him the first time they sparred. He definitely said Tyson got the better of him, but they were together for several days. And he said as the week progressed, he started getting the better of Tyson. So they sparred several times, but the first time they sparred, Lennox definitely, in his autobiography, said that Tyson gave him the business. He said that he weren't ready for the ferocity that Tyson came at him with, because before the sparring session, Tyson was like Lewis's best friend. Do you know what I mean? He was showing him all the fight films and he was so friendly and polite and all this type of stuff because this is what Customado taught him, you know, to be a gentleman and stuff like that. So that's how Tyson was behaving, like a mini Customado. But then when the bell went for the first round of sparring, he came out and tried to take Lewis's head off. So, yeah. But obviously they were young then, and Tyson was a lot more developed by that point physically. Lewis, if you see the photos, he was a beanpole. There was nothing of him. He was just total skinny. There was no muscle on him at all. Whereas Tyson was built like a man. And that's why he was running roughshod over all the juniors, because he was a man against boys in the juniors. Even though he was the same age as those guys, like physically, he was just with it. And the reason I can say this is because I was the same. I stopped growing at 14, 15. So I was huge. Do you know what I mean? I was like a man, and not just tall for my age when I was 14, 15, but I was developed. I had pecs and abs and traps and all this kind of stuff. And I'm running around, you know, playing football and rugby and all this with other kids. And I'm literally in a man's body and they're in kids' bodies. So I was like Jonah Lomu running around in there. You know what I mean? I had like 10 kids hanging off me. They're all my age, but they're all hanging off me and they can't stop me running down the pitch playing rugby. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I know what it's like to be someone who develops very early in terms of you go through puberty very early. So when Mike Tyson was in the juniors, he was just smashing people to pieces. It's not until he, you know, went into the seniors that he actually started having some competition in the amateurs. Because in the juniors, he was a joke. These guys were not men. Their bodies were like little boys, and his body was like a 25-year-old man. Okay, shout out to Now McEwen. I hope I pronounced your name correctly for the £5 super chat. He says, how does Yusuf Kamari fare against other domestic super featherweights? I'm going to do a separate video on Yusuf Kamari. I'm going to do a dedicated video to that particular question. So hold tight for that. And shout out for the super chat. Big up G-Man, as always. And big up this guy called Adolf Stalin for just having such a crazy name. All right, we've got somebody. Come on, bro. Let's not be spamming with weird sex chat lines or whatever it is you're doing in here, bro. Come on. This ain't the place to solicit for that. Yeah, Outmatch says, Mike is always wilding in his podcast. He can't go 5 minutes without crying. It's too much. Yeah, Tyson is off. He's a very off character. That's how he is. You know, I have likened him to, you know, like in the Back to the Future movies, you got Biff, right? Who's like the neighborhood bully. But Biff is also, I'm not going to say Mike Tyson is dumb. He's not dumb, but he does and says things that are very off. Yeah. But because people are scared of him, and certainly when he was younger, people were scared of him, nobody wants to say anything. And it's like Biff in Back to the Future. So, you know, the old saying, the cheesy old saying, I think it's from America, where they would say, why don't you just make like a tree and leave? Yeah. In Back to the Future, Biff didn't get it. So he would say, why don't you just make like a tree and get out of here? It don't make no sense when you say it like that. Yeah. So Mike Tyson has always been a bit like that. He's been like the neighborhood bully who's a little bit off. You know, he's not just a big scary guy. He's a big scary guy who likes pigeons and some strange stuff, weird mind, strange thoughts. You know what I mean? But nobody says anything because they don't want to get him angry. They want to stay in his good graces. So yeah, Mike he's always been a little off. A very intense human being. But that's, of course, what made him so great as a fighter. Being the type of fighter he was, hyper aggressive. And a very skilled pressure fighter, very explosive, very correct puncher. You know, always landed with a knuckle part of the glove, clean. And the kind of fighter he was, I think, that, you know, the intensity of character that it takes to fight the way that he fought, that's what you get with somebody like Mike Tyson. You get someone who's a bit off. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You got to take the whole package, the rough with the smooth. Simon Brandy says, you got any sparring stories of your own? You ever been given the business? Appreciated that Professor interview link, by the way. Hey, big up for the super chat from Simon Brandy. Have I ever been given the business? Yeah, I've been given the business in sparring for sure. There was a time I sparred, well, there was this Jamaican guy I used to spar with who was tall guy, like 6'5", maybe 6'6", but he was quite light. So even though he was like 6'5", 6'6", he probably only weighed no more than 16 stone. So he was maybe a bit like, maybe 15 and a half stone. He was quite wiry and tall. And he would move all over the place. You know, I just couldn't get close to him. So he used to give me he gave me the business several times. Several times in sparring. And it was when I was sparring him that I ended up with a dislocated shoulder. I got so frustrated in one sparring session trying to get to this guy that I was just throwing everything into my punches. I wanted to knock him out because he was just pinging me all over the place and outboxing me and moving around. And, you know, every few seconds, I just hear the punches poof, poof on my face. And when I got him up against the ropes, I was loading up with everything I have, trying to knock him out. And at one point he said, chill, because he could see that I was trying to knock him out. He was like, calm down, man. And then I had him pinned on the ropes and I was trying to throw everything at him. And he managed to lean back and away from the shots. And then he came off the ropes to the other side of the ring. And I must have swung a left hook and dislocated my shoulder. And yeah, that messed me up, that shoulder dislocation. Because in fact, that's never really healed properly. I still have issues with my shoulder, my left shoulder, because of that dislocation that happened. When was that? 2007, 2006? Maybe but somewhere between 2006 and 2008, there or thereabouts. I put my shoulder out. And it's never really been the same since. It's never been the same. So it's obviously healed to a certain extent. But if I go too hard in training, I'll feel almost like a looseness in my shoulder where it feels like it's slightly hanging. Do you know what I mean? So it never really healed properly. I needed an operation on it, really. You know them operations where they cut the tendon or the ligament, they cut it to shorten it and then they bond it together somehow. I've really always needed that operation, but I never had it. Yeah. But I got the business from him a couple times. Also, one of the more embarrassing times for me is when I was in there with a light heavyweight. And he was this African guy who was short. He must have been no more than 5'9", 5'10". He was powerfully built, kind of like an Anthony Yard type build, light heavyweight. And he didn't punch that hard, because I've been in there with light heavyweights who punch very hard. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've been in there with certain men who are not heavyweights that punch harder than certain heavyweights. Do you know what I mean? But when I spotted an African guy, I think he was from a French-speaking African country. And yeah, I got in the ring with him, and the same thing. He was just so fast, like he'd be on the outside, yeah? And I'm taller than him. I got longer arms than him. And he, in a blink of an eye, if he saw my right hand drop, in the blink of an eye, he would cover like, half of the ring, and he's hitting me with a left hook. And I'm like, how the hell did that happen? This guy just covered the distance so fast and then it hit me with a shot. It was crazy. I could not touch that guy at all. Yeah. And that sparring session was when I was at Fitzroy Lodge. And Mick Carney was watching. And if anybody knows Mick Carney, the guy would barely ever smile. but when he saw this guy, this African guy, giving me the business in that sparring session, he just looked at me and shook his head. That's how Mick, he just looked at me and he's just like, he's shaking his head. He's like, you're not fit. Yeah, you're not fit. I'm not going to have you box, because and in many boxing clubs, they have a team. There's only a certain amount of fighters that can actually be on the team. And I think it was that session where he took me off the team. It was that session, or maybe another one, I can't remember. But he's like, if you're gonna get beatings like that, then you can't be on the team. Come during the day or something. Yeah, get yourself in better shape, and then maybe we'll look to put you back on the team. Because that's no good. But I also gave plenty of beatings. You know what I mean? Like I was just getting had up every time. But yeah, I took my licks like everybody else. I never got knocked out or dropped. But I definitely took a couple beatings in there, for sure. Comes with the territory. You can't make omelet without cracking eggs, All right, let me get some more super chats here. I feel like I've missed a few while I'm relaying these stories to you guys. Okay, Simon Brandy says, you got any? Okay, I've answered that one, but there was another one, I swear. Where's the other super chat? Oh no, I think I'm up to date on the super chats. Excuse me. Okay, let's go back into the StreamYard. Yeah. Catch up with the comments. We got Adrian Remedy in the place. Big up, Adrian. IFL Coogan says, did you spar David Haye? No, I never sparred David Haye. But when I first started my original YouTube channel back in 2010, I was very critical of David Haye at the time because he was avoiding the Klitschko's. But he was gaslighting the public into believing that the Klitschko's were avoiding him. Like that. So I was constantly calling David Haye out for the BS. Not calling him out to fight him, obviously, but, on my channel saying, nah, man, David Haye's avoiding the Klitschko's. He's talking rubbish. Rare. And so because David Haye was constantly doing this, I was constantly making videos criticizing him because he was doing it all the time. And people started thinking, because people knew that I was at one of the gyms. I went to several different gyms during the time I was boxing. But one of the gyms I was at was Fitzroy Lodge. And obviously David Haye was at the gym as well at Fitzroy Lodge, but I started at Fitzroy Lodge after he'd already left. Yeah, he fell out with Mick Carney, excuse me. He fell out with Mick Carney. Him and Adam Booth went off to do their own thing. And I think Audley Harrison had something to do with their falling out as well, because he used to come around Fitzroy Lodge, and from what I was told, Mick didn't get along with Audley and, whatever. So, people put 2 and 2 together and got 5, and they thought, well, David Haye must have either knocked you out in sparring or he stole your girlfriend or this, that, and the other. Well, me and David Haye don't like the same girls, for one. Yeah. And we weren't at Fitzroy Lodge at the same time. And I never sparred him. So, no, it's just as simple as me being objective and looking at what he was doing, holding the WBA belt hostage, making out as though he wanted to fight the Klitschko's when he didn't. He actually pulled out of the Vitali Klitschko fight to take on Valoev instead. Yeah. And then he just held on, milked that WBA belt for a bit before eventually facing Vladimir. Anyway, that's old stuff. Where did this guy, right, who's posting all this naked stuff, do they actually get any takers when they start spamming live chats? Do people actually go and click on the links that they're putting in there? I hope none of you guys are clicking them links, Huh? Same says, Hatman, who are the best prospects in the UK, and have you seen Adam Azim? Yeah, I've seen Adam Azim. He's been knocking people out and doing backflips, and his hero is Prince Nassim and so on. But, need to see him in there with somebody with a pulse before I can make any kind of assessment. Callum saying needs some pins in the shoulder. Yeah, maybe, because it's never really been the same since. Never really been the same since. Intellect says, "How about do you watch Showbiz the Adult?" Nah, I don't watch that guy. Ian says, "What podcast do you listen to?" What podcast do I listen to? I listen to many a podcast. In terms of on YouTube, I posted a podcast on the community page of my YouTube channel. Yeah. One second. Yeah, so a podcast I watch is the Tom Woods Show, or listen to. Yeah, I listen to the Tom Woods podcast. Tom Woods is like a conservative, libertarian American guy, very intelligent guy, very reasonable. So I enjoy his daily pod. He actually does a podcast every day. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour, but it is every day. So I like the Tom Woods Show. It's highbrow stuff. It's not, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some popular podcast that I don't watch. I mean, occasionally I might tune into something dumb for a laugh. Shout out to Clement for the super chat. Big up, big up. Thank you, Clement. Doomslayer says, what's your top 5 pound for pound? I'd say mine is, I don't do pound for pound. I'm not into the pound for pound stuff because it's just, as I've explained many times in the past, it's such an abstract concept. How do you, in a pound for pound mythical matchup, pit Usyk against Terence Crawford? What size do you make Usyk? What weight do you make him? Yeah, you could say they're both 147 pounds, but what height would Usyk be at 147? Do you know what I mean? It's such an abstract concept. I'm not really into pound for pound. I might give my view on who should be number 1 pound for pound, but in terms of doing a top 5 or top 10, I'm not really into that. It's just very abstract, Simon Brandy says, if you could commentate on a boxing match, which fight would you pick? And who would be your preferred co-commentators? That's a great question. That's a great question. And you might not like the answer in terms of my co-commentators. My co-commentators would be the Boxing Brotherhood. Yeah. Chris Andre, Outmatch Boxing, Boxing on the Edge, G-Man. To hell with it. We get a huge ensemble boxing commentary team. We could include Paulie Malignaggi. I want to get Steve Holdsworth in there. Maybe Carl Froch doing some bits and pieces just to rub people up the wrong way. And Prince Nassim. Yeah, we get Prince Nassim involved because I want to hear him say, I think he should finish. I think he should finish. Prince Nassim is out there as well. I was talking about Mike Tyson being out there. Prince Nassim is out there in his own way. He's not quite the full shilling. No disrespect. But if you ever, there's something surreal about listening to Naz do punditry. It's just something surreal about it. You need to brock them up. that's what Naz said after the Eubank George Groves fight. And in terms of which fight it would have to be AJ versus Tyson Fury. Yeah. AJ Tyson Fury. It'd have to be that fight. Or even AJ Wilder will be an interesting one. Doomslayer says, fair enough. Who are your 5 favorite fighters then? My 5 favorite fighters, what, right now? My 5 favorite fighters right now. I would have said Babbage, but I don't know, his last few fights haven't been that exciting because I did like watching Babbage, but I mean, they were exciting, but they weren't like the old Babbage. It's almost like he's a bit shop worn already. So I would have said Babbage, and I'm talking about favorite here. These are not the fighters who I think are the best. They're just my favorites, the most fun fighters to watch. Yeah, I'd have to say Wilder's there. Yeah. I'd have to agree with Jackie Boy Johnson. Well, he's saying AJ beats Wilder, but he's not saying Wilder's necessarily one of his favorite fighters. I'd have to say Wilder's one of my favorite fighters. In the ring. Outside the ring, the man's monumental idiot. But in the ring, I love watching Wilder fight, don't you? It's always entertaining. It's always crazy. You always get the feeling that anything could happen at any time. So yeah, Wilder's there. Wave says Conor Benn. Conor Benn's been growing on me in the ring. Yeah. He seems to be developing into a serious puncher. Although, he's been fighting at a certain level, so maybe that has flattered him in terms of punching power. We don't know yet. But Conor Benn's definitely grown on me in terms of entertainment. Yep. I like the knockout over Chris Algieri, especially. Poor Chris Algieri. He got flattened. Let me take a sip of my drink here. Hang on. I'm sitting here with some of the very finest in Colombian coffee. You thought I was going to say something else there for a second, innit? The very finest in Colombian coffee. BH says, too many fighters left it all in Dylan's gym. I think so. Wolverine says, Yorkshire tea for the win. Falafel man, big up. Boots Ennis, thank you. In fact, thank you. Thank you. The last person to comment. Crawford's got to be up there among my favorite. Spencer's got to be up there. And I'm not talking about all the politics outside the ring, because that annoys me just like it annoys you guys. But in the ring, I do like watching Bud Crawford. Jerome Ennis is fantastic in the ring. And for the young fighters, Jared Anderson I find him very exciting to watch. Yeah, Jared Anderson, just every time I watch him fight, I feel like I'm looking at someone special. It remains to be seen, right? He's got special athleticism and coordination and all that. But boxing requires so much more than just the physical talent. But every time I watch Anderson, I think this guy's special. Carmine says, are you in Colombia? No, I'm not in Colombia, but, not a million miles away. But they do have some nice Colombian product here. I don't even do drugs, people. I'm just messing about. I do drink see, I'm not even a coffee guy, but the coffee out here is fantastic. I mean, it should be, right? It doesn't have the bitter aftertaste that coffee normally has. It's just so smooth. Might smuggle some with me in the suitcase wherever I go. Wherever I go next. Wolverine says, because it numbs your mouth. Mark B says, Jared Anderson has Mayweather type aura in the ring. Like he is in highest flow state in the ring. Yeah, he has that kind of ring presence, that self-assured demeanor. Black Dynamite says, something tells me Oscar De La Hoya will make a visit over there. Man, Oscar's probably making mule runs as we speak, allegedly. Gotta get the allegedly in there. Kier says, do you miss the UK? No. 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 I've been traveling most of my life. So, nah. Okay, this is a good question. OCM Media says, Hatman, do you think Eddie Hearn is partially regretting his action for leaving Sky because of the competition in the UK market now? I think if he's honest with himself, he has to be. I know that part of him is very stubborn and he wants to prove that it was the right decision all along, but surely there's some doubts going on deep down in there with Eddie Hearn. There must be. There must be. I find it hard to think that there isn't, you know? Wolverine says Sky just make better shows, and that's a fact. I think more than anything, it's just the accessibility of DAZN that's really holding Eddie and DAZN back. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing it, but you know, DAZN needs to be on the same platform as Sky and BT. That's the long and the short of it. Again, people are sick of hearing this, but you don't see DAZN in pubs, do you? I know Johnny Nelson and everybody else has said that, and they've done it to death, but it's true. Same says, Hatman living in Guyana, my guess. Not Guyana. No. I'm living in a Spanish-speaking country, I could say that. It's all Spanish here. But for how long will I be staying there? That's the question. Huh? Don't be surprised if you see some other scenery at the end of some of my videos in the not too distant future. Pugilist King, big up. He says, did you hear about the Chisora Fury trilogy rumors? Yes, I've heard about that. Doesn't surprise me with Tyson Fury. He says that Chisora betrayed him because Chisora picked Dillian Whyte to beat him, and he doesn't even like Dillian Whyte apparently, so why is he picking Dillian Whyte to knock Fury out? I wonder whether Chisora was maybe felt a certain way about Joseph Parker training in the Fury gym in the run-up to their rematch. Well, both fights, but particularly the run-up to their rematch. Maybe Chisora already kind of felt slighted by Fury because Fury's helping Parker out. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that's what started it. But yeah, nobody wants to see a Chisora, Fury Chisora trilogy. Nobody wants to see that. That would be some pretty cynical. That'd be a cynical move by Tyson Fury to do that. I hope he doesn't do that. Chris Andre says, agree. It's about accessibility. DAZN have put on much better shows than Sky. Sky is currently mainly domestic prospects. It's just about the platform, as Hatman says, in my humble opinion. Yes, G-Man. Eddie Hearn jinxed himself. Pound for Pound says, Johnny Nelson saying I would beat Usyk, I would outbox him. I wouldn't expect him to say anything else, to be honest. When a guy has fought at a top level like Johnny Nelson, he's going to believe in himself. He's going to have an ego that tells him, I can beat any man out there. In my weight division, at least. So I don't even have an issue with him saying that, to be honest. I'm not saying I agree with him, but I don't have an issue with him saying it. The governor says Fury wants Chisora this week, then he'll want David A next week. Yeah, probably. Endo Media says, what's with the secrecy regarding where you're at the moment? Love your show, by the way. I mean, that's a good question. I've always been old school, real old school. So let me tell you how old school I am in my ways. Back in the days in Brixton, right, in the 80s and in the 90s, we didn't like people taking pictures of us. You know, people get happy and they pull out a little disposable camera and, oh, let's get a picture. He ain't taking a picture of me. Now, there are two reasons for this. Obviously, some of us were a bit naughty, you know, and so you don't want people knowing what you look like and whatever. But at the same time, we're rebels, you know, we're, I guess, by nature, a bit anti-establishment and whatever. And so you don't want to get onto their radar at the same time. You understand? And so those habits stay with you, because I always think about, how do I benefit? Even if an action isn't going to necessarily harm me, how do I benefit from it? And if I don't benefit from it, then I just don't go ahead and do it. You see what I'm saying? So if I come out and start saying, okay, I'm here and I'm in this location and in that location, is it going to harm me? Probably not. But is it going to benefit me? Probably not. Do you know what I mean? So if it's not really going to benefit me, I just rather not say it. KO Boxing Vibe, big up for the super chat. He says, off topic, but what do you think are the main cultural differences between South America and Europe? Oh, wow. What are the main cultural differences? I mean, Europe is a big place, so I want to narrow it down to Britain. And this can apply to many parts of the world when you compare them to Britain. But here, people are a lot more conversational. You know, the locals will just walk up to you and start having a conversation, which doesn't really happen in Britain. In Britain, people tend to be a little more reserved, you know. Same when you compare Britain to America. In America, people are more likely to talk to you, just random strangers. So yeah, here, the locals will chat to you and what have you. So that's one cultural difference. It's a lot more traditional here. So the gender roles are far more old school. That's another thing. Also, because it's a tropical country and a tropical climate, people spend a lot more time outside, you know, just hanging around outside all the time. And that's the same in most hot countries or, you know, tropical, semi-tropical countries. People are always outside. So that's one of the main things, you know. People don't lounge around in their houses all day watching television series and playing video games. They're outside all day. They'll sit on the, you know, steps outside or on the veranda or wherever it is. They'll sit outside all day or on the beach or wherever. So that's a cultural difference. What other cultural differences are there? It's a good question. I would say those are some of the main ones. Those are some of the main ones. People here are very, very talkative and yeah. The Colonel says people not talking to each other is more of a London thing. Well, it's more pronounced in London, but I wouldn't say it's only a London thing. It's kind of a British thing in general. People up north in the UK are more talkative and more, you know, less pretentious and more open than they are in London for sure. But it's still not like here. And it's still not like many other cultures around the world where people are far more just inquisitive. There's no ice there. Do you know what I mean? Here, people are just talk to you as if they already know you. I've had that happen a few times. You know, people come up to me and they're talking to me with a familiarity as if they already know me. And I'm questioning myself, like, do I know this person? Because that's how familiar they are when they're talking to me. JG says, do you speak Spanish? I speak no Spanish. I speak no Spanish. But luckily, all the locals here speak English. Might be broken English, but they can all get by. It's a very big tourist economy here. The Colonel says that must be a culture shock. Nah, man, because I've traveled so many different places. I enjoy different cultures. You know, I'm not somebody who is stuck in my ways, that goes round and round in the same patterns and in the same circles my whole life. I've never been like that. I've always been a nomad. I've always been someone who loves to switch it up. And I hate being in the same repetitive patterns in life. It's one of the reasons I hated school, because school is like the same thing over and over again. I hate that. I always like to switch up and do different things, you know? So a change of pace is always great for me. I never feel a culture shock or I always enjoy and embrace the change. I love adventure. Stay Humble says, do you have ADHD? I've never been diagnosed with it. Is it possible I could have it? Maybe, because that is one of the symptoms, right? Somebody with ADHD, people with ADHD, they hate routines. And they also find it difficult to finish things. So they'll start something and they won't finish it. And they'll start another thing and not finish it and start another. So, you know, I might have some of the traits of ADHD, but I have some of the traits of psychopathy as well. But I'm not a psychopath. But I do have a couple of the traits. Wolverine says, I was in Southend in Essex for a wedding a few weeks ago. I was outside smoking bud for 4 days straight and nobody once said hello. Or can I have someone that do be to me? In Stoke, there'll be a queue forming. Yeah, it's a bit stush down Southend because Southend is just full of people from London. That's it. People who catch trains on the weekend when it's sunny from London to Southend. It's just full of people from London there. So it's the same vibe. Kit Donk Wizard said that's exactly what a psychopath would say. They probably would, to be fair. Okay, Xavier Williams says, if you were AJ's head trainer instead of Garcia and Angel, do you think you could help AJ win? It's like I said on the last live, I don't want to sit here and tell you that I'll be a amazing trainer or anything like that, because there have been great fighters who tried their hand at coaching and it didn't work out very well, like Lennox Lewis. Everything that he touched as a trainer turned to doo-doo. You know what I mean? Lewis seemingly wasn't particularly gifted at trying to train people, although I don't think he ever trained somebody as a dedicated trainer. He came in and gave advice and, you know, stuff like that, but it never seemed to work out well. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I'll be an amazing trainer and this, that, and the other, because training, teaching is an art form and a skill in itself. So you can have all the knowledge in your head that you want. Are you able to relay that knowledge to the fighter? Are you able to connect with the fighter mentally and emotionally such that they are receptive to what you're trying to teach them? Yeah, there's so many things that go into coaching a fighter. So I don't want to sit here and start gassing myself up about, oh yeah, I'd be able to do this and that with AJ. The most I would say is, if I was part of that team, I would definitely have some input. Yeah, I would definitely want to give my 2 cents and input. But in terms of being the head trainer, I wouldn't be I don't have enough experience to say, oh yeah, I can step in and be AJ's head trainer. Ortega says, Hatman, have you ever been north of the Watford Gap? I've been all the way up in Scotland, bro. Up in the Highlands, Aberdeen, and even north of there. Been all over the UK. Leo O'Brien says, Hatman, is the Loch Ness real? I guess you mean the Loch Ness Monster. I don't think so. I mean, wouldn't they have found it by now if it was real? It's an intriguing mystery, the Loch Ness Monster. But if it was an actual plesiosaur or whatever, surely they would have found it. I know back in the 90s when the X-Files was popular and they used to do lots of different shows about the paranormal and whatever, they would always talk about Nessie and, well, maybe Nessie's living in an underwater cave and that's why you never see. But a plesiosaur breathes air. Do you know what I mean? And I know Loch Ness is big, but there's plenty of people on Loch Ness. I don't see how something like that could still be up there. KO Boxing Vibe says, and shout out for the super chat, by the way. How rapidly did your channel grow when you got started? Well, my original channel, which is not this one, right? My old channel, that channel grew quite quickly, but I have to say that one of the reasons it grew quite quickly is because I was using fight footage on there. Yeah, I had several like boxing highlight videos and stuff like that. And that gave me a lot of views and a lot of subscribers in the early days. And then I would be able to, because back then you would be able to put custom annotations, like clickable annotations on your videos. You can still put some annotations on video, but it's very limited. Back then you could put custom annotations on any part of the video. And so on those boxing highlight videos, knockout reels and stuff like that, I will put links to my prediction videos. You see it? So I get a lot of traffic that way. And YouTube was more interactive then. There was more of a community then. So they used to have the function on YouTube videos to reply to anybody's video. So they would have to approve it, but you would click a reply button and you would post the link to your reply video. And then there will be a thumbnail of your reply video directly under their video. I think it'll be at the top of the comment section. You'd see a thumbnail of your video replying to their video. That's if they approved your reply. So that made it more of a community thing. Channels, random channels even would interact with each other more because of that reply function. And everybody hated it when they got rid of that function. YouTube, and I don't believe them, they said they removed it because nobody was using it. That's BS. Everybody was using that reply function. Everybody was using it. And that also helped to get your subscribers up. When you're on other channels who are bigger than yours and you're communicating with them, talking to them and stuff like that, debating about boxing, it gets people to your channel. So my original channel grew quite fast. And I obviously took my subscribers over to this channel eventually, the new channel. And this one grew very fast around, must have been around 2017. 2016, 2017 is when it really took. The early days on this channel, it was growing steadily, but somewhere around 2017, maybe 2016, 2017, the numbers really went up really quick for some reason. I guess it hit some type of algorithm or whatever, and the numbers just skyrocketed. But then once I got to about 65, 70,000, it's been very slow in terms of channel growth. And what I've observed over the years is that that's the case for most channels. But once they hit 100K, then all of a sudden another algorithm kicks in, and I guess they get put higher up in the search results because they've got their YouTube plaque and the 100K subs. And all of a sudden, the people I've seen reach 100K, it might take them 10 years. But once they reach 100K, it's like they reach 200K in a year after that, And so it was a similar situation getting from, let's say, 15K to 20, 30K. That was slow. But then up between 20, 30K and 65, it was very fast. So the channel growth doesn't appear to be linear for most people, from what I've observed over the years. It seems to stop and start. Oh man, this guy pushing his sex chat business, whatever it is, he's back. Come on, bro, give me a break. Let me get this spammer out of here and this weird sex chat stuff. Is this guy a troll? Because look at the stuff he's saying. Only Putin didn't find his girl with us. But if he is a troll, why? I mean, you got too much time on your hands if that's you trolling. Okay, there's somebody here with an Arabic name, and I can speak a little Arabic, but I cannot read it at all. He says, yo, Hatman, are you a Lord of the Rings fan? If so, what's your opinion on the wokeness of the Amazon series? Yes, I do like Lord of the Rings. And I'm one of the few people that actually likes the Hobbit films as well. I enjoy the Hobbit films, particularly the second film. What do I think of the Amazon series? I'm not going anywhere near it because I saw the trailer for it and it just looked awful. And it's owned by Disney now, isn't it? No, because if it was Disney, it'd be on the Disney Channel. That's Star Wars. But still, whoever owns it, I saw the trailer, it just looked horrible. That was not Lord of the Rings. That was not Tolkien, what I saw in them trailers there. That was horrible. Stephen Toll says, Hatman, who do you think would have won between Nigel Benn and Julian Jackson? Great question. I think that'll be a shootout. Whoever lands first wins. I mean, toss a coin. Because on certain days, Nigel Benn would land first. On other days, Julian Jackson would land first. Julian Jackson was more controlled. Nigel Benn was faster. Yeah. Depends on the day. Ben was more fluid. Julian Jackson a bit stiff. Both guys didn't have the greatest chin. If I had to toss a coin and pick him, I'd probably go with Ben because he did come through Jarrell McClellan. And I think his survival instincts were better. He really learned from that first Chris Eubank fight. His survival instincts were very good after that. And well, not just the Chris Eubank fight, also the Michael Watson fight. That was his first loss. He learned from those experiences and he was able to take care of himself a lot better. Bad Nasher says the Matrix video you did, or the Matrix videos I did were fantastic. Hey, thank you. Yeah, Outmatch, I agree with you. That Mike Tyson Hulu film looks horrible. It looks horrible. And the Mike Tyson film back in the day starring Michael J. White was horrible too. The casting is always off. I never liked Michael J. White as Mike Tyson. In fact, I just don't like Michael J. White full stop. I think he's a fake tough guy. He's one of the fakest tough guys I've seen. I don't believe that guy at all. You know, he always comes out in interviews saying that, oh, I had a worse temper than Mike Tyson and I was this tough guy in the street. I don't believe none of it. I think it's all cap with that Michael J. White character. Now, he's an actor at the end of the day, right? So actors are supposed to act, but I think he tries to take the acting off screen. You know, like Steven Seagal, he thought he was a tough guy offset as well, but he weren't tough at all. Jean-Claude Van Damme caught him lacking at some swanky party and told him to come outside and shoot a fair one. Van Damme, you know. And Seagal didn't want to come outside. Big old Steven Seagal, 6'5", doing all the jiu-jitsu and whatever in his films. But yeah, he didn't want no smoke with Van Damme. That's crazy. Imagine getting embarrassed by a guy. But look, Van Damme had a lot of kickboxing fights, so he was a real fighter. But still, you remember that scene in Kickboxer where Van Damme's doing that crazy dancing? You know, where he's drunk in that Thai bar. And he's doing that crazy, crazy Van Damme dance. I mean, classic 80s cheese. That's right, Raj. Yes, Stallone's house. Seagal versus Van Damme. Yeah. Van Damme embarrassed him. Huh? Iron Fist says, is it the one with Jamie Foxx? Now, the Amazon one, or excuse me, the Hulu one is not the one with Jamie Foxx. I don't think anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's the Jamie Foxx one. The Jamie Foxx one, I'm not sure how they're going to do that. Isn't Jamie Foxx like in his 50s? How's he going to play a young Mike Tyson when he's in his 50s? I guess they say they're going to use, you know, CGI and stuff. But, I mean, unless they've got a real serious budget, like a Planet of the Apes style budget, then the CGI is probably going to be horrible. Just look at The Irishman. The CGI in that film was horrible, where they tried to make De Niro and Pesci, well, De Niro mainly, look young. Oh, it looked awful. It looked awful. I've seen better deep fakes, fan-made deep fakes than that. Do you know what I mean? I've seen better Snapchat deep fakes than the CGI in The Irishman. Horrible. Hey, that's interesting info there, Chris, Andre, about people in MMA hating Steven Seagal because he's not only supposedly a fake tough guy, but he's a prick too with it. Yeah, he's just a total fake in terms of being a tough guy outside the ring. And I've always had that feeling about Michael J. White as well. I don't believe him. I don't believe him. He just tries too hard to come across as a tough guy outside the ring. I think it's all cap. I don't think he's tough at all. I think it's all cap. You know, I remember some video where he was acting like he was schooling Kimbo Slice. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to show you this and that, Kimbo, because, you know, Michael J. White likes to make out that he's some martial arts guy. And I know Kimbo Slice, he's from my country, by the way, Kimbo Slice, R.I.P. He wasn't the greatest fighter in the world, obviously. Didn't do that great in UFC, did he? But I was just watching Michael J. White try and act like he was teaching Kimbo something, like he was Kimbo Sensei. And I was thinking, Kimbo would F you up in about 2 seconds, bro. Like, realistically. Kimbo was actually a real tough guy outside the ring. Not like he was the greatest fighter in the world, but he was an actual street guy and he was a tough guy. Yeah? He had all them bare knuckles and all that business. Wow. Vigilante said Michael J. White said it beat Bruce Lee. Yeah, I don't rate. Nah. I've always thought Michael J. White is a phony. That guy's a phony. He's not really a tough guy at all. Don't believe him. There was a story that I heard. I don't know whether it's true, but it was a story that Tupac actually, even though he was friendly with Michael J. White, there was a story that Tupac actually beat up Michael J. White. Now, part of me thinks it's got to be BS made up by some Tupac fanatics, and there's plenty of those. But another part of me thinks, you know what? Like, Tupac was actually a scrapper. Yeah, even though he's not like a trained boxer or anything like that, he was a genuine scrapper in the streets. Could he have chinned Michael J. White? I mean, stranger things have happened. I've seen plenty of little skinny guys take out big muscular guys before, quickly, in street fights. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I'm not saying it's true, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Cash for Cat said Eddie Hearn mentioned White versus Wilder. Yeah, I mean, who's advising Dylan? Maybe nobody can advise him. You know, Dylan's a very hard-headed character. Maybe nobody can make an intervention and say no. Do we really want to see Dylan get poleaxed again? It's happened 2 times in his last 3 fights. He goes in there against Wilder. We already know what's going to happen. Realistically, we know what's going to happen. Crazy Johnson's, I can tell you where I'm from, Crazy Johnson. I'm from the 242. We don't say bomba clot and all that stuff. We say, well, mother sick. That's what we say. Well, mother sick, eh? That's our saying, huh? In the 242. Well, mother sick. Boy. We also say that. Instead of saying boy, we say boy. So if you can figure it out from that, Where do they say, well, mother sick? And where do they say, boy? And rather than saying, I mean, we do say brother sometimes, but mainly we like to say star or drad. We say drad a lot. Well, mother sick, drad. Oh, you see, bad boy's got it. Well, mother sick. Yeah, he's got it. There you go. Falafel man, yes. The Ross you're dealing with, boy. Crazy Johnson says, have you done an ancestry test? No, I don't trust them people with my DNA. I don't trust them people. Where's that DNA going to end up? No. And what am I really going to do with my DNA anyway? If they say, okay, your DNA comes from Nigeria or Congo or wherever, what am I going to do? Rock up there and be like, yo, 300 years ago, like, nah, man, they ain't trying to hear that. The boxing world says, Hatman, does being born in England make you English? I mean, people got different views, right? People have different views. What do you think? What's your view? It's all a matter of opinion. You'll never be ethnically English, right? But culturally, you can become English, sure. Although English culture is being destroyed. I mean, just as many cultures around the world are being destroyed by the global clique that are trying to create some type of monoculture for the whole world to adopt. That's their idea that they have in their head. And a part of that, they want to destroy traditional English culture and all the traditional cultures they want rid. So when I say you could be culturally English, what does that really mean today? You know, this past few days, I've been listening to a lot of music from the 80s, you know, getting a bit nostalgic. Listening to all these old 80s songs. Brings back old memories and old feelings and stuff like that. Makes me feel amazing listening to all the 80s stuff. And one of the songs that I've been listening to was Baggy Trousers by Madness. You know, and that song encapsulates the spirit of London in the 1980s. If you want to know what the vibe of London was like for a young person, the average young person in London in the 1980s, go watch the video, the music video, Baggy Trousers by Madness. That's what England was like those times. Today, it's a completely different vibe. That version of London doesn't exist anymore. And obviously, there were certain things that changed for the better, but there's a lot of things that, for me, changed for the worse. And so as an immigrant, you know, me and my family moved to the UK when I was like 7, 8 years old. And there was lots of things that I fell in love with about London back then, you know, England back then in the 80s. You know, certain things about British culture and British ways that I always found interesting and charming. Do you know what I mean? But those British ways are all gone now. It's all, it's been incredible how quickly all that's disappeared. Anyway, interesting question. Shout out to Chris Andre for the super chat. He says, allow the ancestry test. They can make DNA weapons targeting specific citizens. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's possible, right? I'm not sure I would be overly concerned about that happening to me, but it's like I said earlier on. Why give people information that they don't necessarily need? When you ain't got no information on them, you don't know who's taking your DNA. You don't have their DNA. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yo, I'm not going to give them all this information about me when I don't have all this information about them and the means to use that information potentially against them the way they have it, that they potentially could use it against me. GJ says, is there such thing as ethnic English though? It's a good question because, of course, the English are a mixture of peoples from all over Europe, right? The Angles and the Saxons, the original indigenous British, as in the Celts and so on. Romans, I'm sure there are some white Brits that actually have some genetic lineage that goes back to when the Romans conquered Britain. So it depends how you want to class ethnic English. Do you know what I mean? How far do you want to go back? Are people of Celtic descent more English than people of Anglo-Saxon descent? Do you know what I mean? Crazy Johnson says, do you talk about the Illuminati on your podcast? I don't talk about the Illuminati because the Illuminati is like a pop culture umbrella term to describe, which is used to describe the ruling class. So I use terms like the ruling class, the deep state, so on and so forth. The corporate class, however you want to describe them. I don't like terms like the Illuminati. Obviously, the Illuminati were a real organization several centuries ago. Is it possible they went underground? I mean, organizations go underground, but I don't think it's as simple as just, the whole pop culture. Oh, the Illuminati. I don't think it's as simple as that personally. But yes, I do talk about those types of topics, yes. But maybe not framing it in a nice little, packaging it in a nice little bow and blaming it all on one organization called the Illuminati. I don't really do that. I think it's a bit more complex than that. The Vikings, I mean, they're more people, right, that invaded the British Isles. The Vikings, yes? Yeah, the Vikings. Didn't they invade Ireland? The Vikings, I believe they did in Wales and stuff like that. So, yeah. Yeah, see, Raj knows about baggy trousers, baggy trousers, baggy trousers, baggy trousers. Yes, 1980s, man. Hang on. How did I get onto talking about baggy trousers? The 80s was a great decade. Were any of you guys around in the 1980s? as in born either in the very early 80s or earlier. The 80s was a great decade. Great music. The world was a bigger place back then, a much bigger place, a less spoiled place. Jackie Boy in 81, okay. That's my generation right there. Okay, Mark says earliest 80s, bruh. All right. Yes. Smile back if you're ugly says early 80s, but don't remember much of the 80s. Late 80s only, really. 80s was great, man. My favorite decade for sure was the 80s. The 90s was good too, but I prefer the 80s. Oh, the 80s in terms of hairstyles and fashion and all that type of stuff was shocking, horrific. But that's part of the charm. You know them ones. It's like I was talking to somebody in the Element group about Arnold Schwarzenegger films. Yeah. And I posted a clip of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator. And there's a part where he goes into a gun shop. Yeah. And he starts asking the guy for all these guns off the shelf. And one of them is the Uzi 9mm and also a pump action. And at the end of the scene, like Arnie's at the counter and my man is like turning around, bringing him different guns and that. And he says, which one do you want to take? And Arnie's like, all, all, I'll take all of them. And that's funny in itself, you know, Arnie's whole robotic, the way he talks was just funny. And then Arnie starts loading up the pumpy with cartridges, right? And the guy's like, hey, you can't do that. And Arnie just points the pumpy at him and he's like, wrong. Hey, you can't do that. Wrong. Shoots him in the stomach. And the guy I was talking to, he didn't understand why I found that clip funny. So, I mean, like the 80s was like the 80s, the films were cheesy, but they were feel good. They were full of montages and they did the hero's journey to death in the 80s in the movies. It was montage central. Every movie had to have some massive montage where they would pick like the most popular song in the world at the time and they'd, you know, do this montage to the song. So they were very formulaic films, but they always were feel-good films with real funny characters and there was loads of cheese, but it was just, I don't know. Bill Murray was big in the 80s, very charismatic actor, Bill Murray. And Ghostbusters and Scrooge, you know? Yes, Marks. It was always rock and roll with cheese and montages, indeed. Like Rocky, of course. Huh? Rocky had all the montages. Stallone killed it with those Rocky montages. But the 80s had all the power ballads and memorable tracks, you know, memorable songs, all that 80s, the reverb, every 80s song had crazy amounts of reverb on every instrument. Loads of reverb on the drums, on the strings, on the synths, everything had just crazy reverb on it. But I like the 80s sound. It's a very glossy, kind of high-end sound they had back then compared to now where everything is a lot more bassy and mid. But back then it was like very top heavy, you know, high end. glossy sounding 80s music. Yeah. Go look at 1983 and see how many all-time classic songs came out in that year alone. Literally timeless songs that came out in 1983. It's crazy. Just 1 year alone. I think Ain't Nobody by Shaka Khan came out in 83. Michael Jackson put songs out in 83. I'm sure Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight, might have came out in 83. Bob Marley, I think he was dead by 83, weren't he? When did he die? 82, 80? He died in the early 80s. But obviously there was still a big back catalogue of Bob Marley music. Maybe Buffalo Soldier came out around 83, 84. There was just so many iconic classic songs. Like Every Breath You Take, what's it called now? I'll Be Watching You, The Police. Do you know what I mean? All these like iconic classic songs that have been sampled a million times over and people done a million covers, and they all came out in 83. that year alone was crazy. Yeah, Blade Runner. Oh yeah, Blade Runner sequel. Yeah, that was a pretty good film. See, Chris Andre knows power ballads are sick to this day. I'm not ashamed to admit that I listen to power ballads every now and then from the 80s. Come on. You know, driving along in your car, singing some 80s power ballad. It happens. It's okay. It does happen. In fact, talk about Ghostbusters, right? Airhead's talking about the Ghostbusters. I was singing the other day along to the theme from Ghostbusters 2 by Bobby Brown. I think it's called Is It All on Our Own? What's it called? Well, I guess we're gonna have to take control. Yeah, I'm not a good singer, people, but I'm relaying so you guys recognize the song if you're old enough. On Our Own. Thank you, David. Yes. Well, I guess we're gonna have to take control. Come on. Joe Starter says the 80s was so sickly, it's a bloody miracle we didn't all end up as diabetics. Yeah, it was super sweet. All the music was whimsical, super sweet, whimsical music. But it was the spirit of the time, It was the spirit of the time. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. The Betamax versus VHS war. Cassette tapes, of course, top loading video machines. You see, that's 80s. In the 90s, the VHS machines, you put the cassette in the front. But in the 80s, they had them big old silver Sony VHS and Betamax cassette players where the tape went in the top. You had to press the eject and the top would come up. You know what I'm talking about now, yeah? The top of the thing would come up and you put the cassette in there and you push it back down. Huh? Rohan says, did you watch the old 80s cartoons like He-Man? Yes. Yeah, come on. He-Man and Thundercats. Yep. Walkmans. Yep. Bad Boy Hi-Fis. The Ghetto Blasters. Like Radio Raheem, not Radio Raheem from Seconds Out. I'm talking about Radio Raheem from the Spike Lee film, Do the Right Thing. Walking around with a ghetto blaster. Yeah. Terrorhawks. Oh, yeah, remember that? With the puppets. Mm-hmm. And shout out to Hernan, all the way from France. Big up, big up. Crazy Johnson says 80s rap was on another level. Was it? I mean, that was primitive back then, but it was still good. You know, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. I think that came out in maybe 81, 82 with The Message. And that song still holds up now. Obviously, the rap styles are very dated, but the production was good. And the lyrics are very clear and concise. And, you know, it still works today. It's like a period piece of music. Yeah, I like The Message. Even though they still got that 70s flow and 70s swag, you know? Talking about and all that stuff. Yeah. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Airwolf, Street Hawk. Ooh, Manimal. Who remembers Manimal? Anyone old enough to remember Manimal? The Fool Guy? Huh? Who knows about the Fool Guy? Yeah, Terrorhawks was crazy. Was scary. Weird puppets. Yeah. But Manimal and the Fool Guy, Falcon Crest, Dallas, MASH. Come on. Lee Majors, yes, the Fool Guy. The A-Team, of course. But that's more mainstream, right? Certain things like Manimal and the Fool Guy, you had to be around then to really know about it. Whereas today, the A-Team was so big that even people now know about the A-Team because they've done like they did like an A-Team movie, didn't they, with Rampage in it and stuff. In fact, that's a good point you're making there. Smile Back If You're Ugly is saying best horror films of the 80s. Loads of horror films came out in the 80s. See, the 80s was a bit schizophrenic. It was a bit bipolar like that. Because on one hand, you had all the feel-good movies with the cheese and the montages and all that and the power ballads. But at the same time, you had an absolute tsunami of horror movies that came out in the 80s. I mean, the 80s was huge for horror. Huge. Yeah? All them horrors came out then. Child's Play, Hellraiser, The Puppet Master, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, Halloween. All these things were coming out in the 80s. I think some of them might have crept into the early 90s, but most of them were the 80s. And even the comedy horror like Critters, you know. There was one, not the Goonies, because that's not a horror, the Ghoulies. How about that one? Huh? So there was loads of horror coming out in the, I mean, just loads and loads of horror films. Oh my gosh, Falafel Man says Banana Man. You know, that's one of the first cartoons I remember watching when I came to the UK as a kid with my family in the 80s, is Banana Man. Yeah. Remember Banana Man? And obviously Danger Mouse with Penfold, Baron Greenback, and Stiletto. And that little furry worm thing that Baron Greenback had. You know, the evil villain's always got to have a little pet that sits on his armrest. Yeah. Jackie Boy says Halloween was 70s. Yeah, but it was a series, right? I'm sure some of the Halloween films came out in the 80s. House. Oh, House. Pet Cemetery. You know, back then, you'll go to certain corner shops back then used to rent out videos. Yeah. There were certain corner shops that would rent out videos, and then there was like dedicated video shops, you know, like Blockbuster and stuff like that. But that came later. But you go to these shops that would rent out videos, and a lot of the horror films, they had like the cover of the video box was, how can I even describe it? It was what's the opposite of embossed? You know, where the video, the surface like comes out and it's got a texture to it. Yeah, they were like that. And all these crazy covers to the boxes of the horror films, you know, with the most demonic scenes you could ever think of, with like green slime and red eyes and just crazy stuff on the front of the 80s VHS boxes for horror movies. It was crazy. I mean, you could get nightmares just from looking at the boxes of those movies. Crazy. Gremlins, of course. Super Gran. Yes, Super Gran. Only Fools and Horses, fantastic. For me, the best British sitcom of all time is Only Fools and Horses. Love that. Del Boy and Rodney. Crazy Johnson says Tom and Jerry. Yeah, Tom and Jerry was great. Love Tom and Jerry. Super Ted. Yeah, Super Ted. Who was the Spotty? That was his friend, isn't it? Super Ted and Spotty. Crazy Johnson said, have you seen The Shining? Yeah, I've seen The Shining. With Jack Nicholson. Here's Johnny. Come on, yeah. Okay, Smile Back If You're Ugly says, 81 must be the best year for horror. American Werewolf in London, The Howling, The Evil Dead, Wolf and Halloween 2. Top Cat. Okay, yeah, cartoon. Top Cat. Who's Top Cat's little sidekick? I forget his name. Funhouse. What was that guy that did Funhouse called? Pat something with a mullet. What was his name? Pat, is it Pat Sharp? Was that his name? Joe Stunner Boxing says, Minder, calls Arthur Daly. Come on. I love all Arthur Daly's slang that he used to use. Reddies, cashing claw. I was watching one clip the other day on YouTube from Minder. And I got to be careful here, but, you know, I'm sure the algorithm doesn't understand what this means. But, yeah, the Minder, what's the Minder called again? Arthur Daly and the Minder's called, what's his name? What's the name of the character in Minder? Arthur Daly and Edward Woodward, the Equalizer. Yeah, that's sick theme. See, that's another thing about the 80s. The theme tunes were iconic and classic. Come on, people. They don't do theme tunes for series that are as catchy and iconic and as classic as they did in the 1980s. Thank you, Steel City. Terry McCann. So there's a scene that I was watching the other day from Minder where, you know, Arthur's always trying to get Terry to do stuff that Terry don't want to do. And they go into this shop and, you know, they're looking for an angle to try and make some money out of this guy by protecting his shop. And Terry says to Arthur, I'm not staying there with that. And Arthur's like, what are you talking about? He's a perfectly respectable young man. He's like, Arthur, the guy's a raving iron. Yeah, they don't use slang like that anymore. The guy's a raving iron. The gaffer. I might have to go watch that clip again. That's funny. The guy's a raving iron. There's thousands of them about. Oh my gosh. See, you guys are really trying to take me back. The Krypton factor. Crazy. The Krypton factor. The Crystal Maze. But that was more the 1990s, wasn't it? The Crystal Maze. With that weird bald guy. Whatever his name was. The Crystal Maze. Who remembers Nightmare? That was like a kid's show. Nightmare. Pat Sharp, Funhouse. Wurzel, Gummidge, and Grot Bags. Gilbert. Who remembers Gilbert, that disgusting green, slimy alien thing? Gilbert. Yeah, Knight Rider was 80s. The Colonel. Yeah, that was 80s. Thank you. Richard O'Brien was the Crystal Maze guy. Joey says Pink Panther. Yeah, I like Pink Panther. I liked the Pink Panther films. I like the cartoon, but I like the films with Peter Sellers. But they were more 70s, innit? I'm not sure if any of the Pink Panther films came out in the 80s. Maybe the last one did. Alf. Oh, wow. Bigfoot and the Hendersons. Transformers, of course. And you know the fake Transformers. You remember what the fake Transformers was? I think it was a British version. The fake Transformer. And they always used to do that back then. They would have like the biggest trend in cartoons, yeah, like the Transformers, then they do a fake version. And the fake version was called GoBots. Yep, see, yeah, someone beat me to it. GoBots. That was the fake one. And in the 90s, obviously they had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I think came out in the 80s, late 80s. Like the cartoon and whatever. And then in the 90s, some other production company came out with Samurai Pizza Cats. Can you imagine? Because obviously you got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles who eat pizza and they're ninjas. And so some next company came out with the Samurai Pizza Cats. Crazy. Hawaii Five-0, yeah. Magnum PI. Oh, Columbo. What? Columbo was my show. Come on. Even though it was the same thing every episode, innit? Where Columbo just acts dumb. And he'll come into the house and he's always putting his finger to his forehead like, yeah, I can't imagine why that would be. Oh, that's really strange. Thank you for clearing it up for me. And then as soon as he leaves, the culprit is there like, oh, thank God that idiot's gone. Got him off my back. And then right when they're relaxing, the doorbell goes again. And they answer it thinking it's going to be somebody else. And Columbo's like, oh, there was just one thing that you said. Same every episode, but it never got old. Just one more thing, yeah. It was almost like Scooby-Doo, where in Scooby-Doo, there's always somebody wearing a monster costume, and they pull off his head in the end of the, yeah. Round a twist, that's taking me back, yep. Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock. Mac B, yep, coming with the Big L lyrics. Listen, Columbo. Yeah, that's always been a funny bar. Listen, Columbo, you're mad because your money comes slow. And what you make in a year, I'm making one show. Now you want to frisk me and search my ride, call me all kind of names, trying to hurt my pride. Crip Talk says Pat Sharp went off the rails badly. Did he? How badly? What you mean like Lister from Red Dwarf badly? Craig Charles badly, like that. Surely not that badly. What happened to Pat Sharp? Timmy Mallet. Who remembers him? Timmy Mallet. And the broom cupboard. Oh, gosh. Whack-a-day, yup. With Timmy Mallet. Oh, my gosh. Yogi Bear, yep. Art Attack, yeah. And you know the little the statue. Other people have pointed this out. There was that talking head statue in Art Attack. It looked like Barry Hearn. A talking head looked like Barry Hearn. Vigilante says, "Were you an '80s wrestling fan?" Huge wrestling fan in the '80s. Huge. Hulk Hogan, you know, Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant, Spitting Image, of course. Oh, Spitting Image. They were killing it back in the days. Giant Haystacks, yeah, and Big Daddy. That was UK wrestling. The Bushwhackers, yep. I always liked the Iron Sheik. I always liked him. He was like one of Hulk Hogan's rivals for a bit. Crazy guy. If you ever seen the Iron Sheik on Howard Stern, that's worth watching. Hilarious. Iron Sheik, crazy in real life. Yeah. Super Sardonic says Iron Sheik was a grade A heel. He was great. He was great. I liked his music as well. The Iron Sheik's ring walk music was great. And of course, Ric Flair. Come on. That was his heyday in the 80s and going into the 90s. Ric Flair was killing it. I mean, how much coke was he doing, allegedly, was he doing to be able to carry on the way he was carrying on in those promos, you know? Crazy. You know the one I'm talking about where he's taking his jacket and his shirt off and he's doing the Ric Flair, he's grandstanding. I dress myself in cashmere, yeah. I dress myself in $800 pleated slacks. I got the biggest house on the biggest hill in the biggest side of town. And you want to know why? Yeah, all that Ric Flair stuff. Love it. Ric Flair was the man, for real, for real. He was that guy. Always got to put the allegedly in there, bro. Always got to put that in there. Ric Flair was the man. David Bellamy. Oh, yeah. David Bellamy actually got sacked by the BBC for questioning. I need to be careful of the algorithm here. For questioning human-caused, let's just say, temperature change. He questioned that, and bear in mind, David Bellamy is a botanist, right? And he didn't think that the science was settled. He questioned it, and the BBC sacked him. Can you imagine? They don't like any kind of scientific debate, do they? They've made their minds up before the debate's even begun. David Bellamy, Bill Oddie. Bill Oddie got sacked by the BBC over over Mr. Jim will fix it, because Bill Oddie came out and said that everybody at the BBC knew what Mr. Jim will fix it was up to. All the heads of the BBC knew. And when he went public and did that interview, the BBC dropped him and they never had him back on their station ever again. When Bill Oddie said that. Yeah, that shows you what the BBC are all about. Unbelievable. Man come out and start exposing them, and they sack him for life. Annika Rice, wow. Chris Akabusi. That's more moving into the 90s, isn't it? Chris Akabusi, Linford Christie, Sally Gunnell, Roger Black. Remember that team there? That GB team there with Chris Akabusi and Christie and Sally Gunnell and all them ones. And then later on you had, what was it in Pinson? Is it Jason and Pinson? Matthew Pinson. I forget what the other guy's surname is. Carl Lewis. Yeah, Carl Lewis was the guy for America, of course. And what year was it? Was it the 88 Olympics or was it 84? Was it 84 or 88 when Ben Johnson cheated? And Ben Johnson got popped because he won in it, but then he got the gold medal taken off him. Steve Cram, oh my gosh. NDO Media, Steve Cram. What? He was running marathons, innit, Steve Cram? Redgrave, thank you. Redgrave and Pinson, that's what it is. Daley Thompson, what? Daley Thompson always did the Adidas adverts. You guys remember that? Always doing the Adidas adverts. Adrian says, Flojo's record still stands today. Women's 100 meters. Must have taken all her supplements. Yeah, say no more. Flojo had the crazy nails, right? Horrible nail. I don't know why some of these women like having nails that long. It's nasty. It's just nasty. I remember having a Guinness Book of Records in the 80s. And in the Guinness Book of Records, it had the man with the longest fingernails in the world. And it was one Indian man. And when I tell you these fingernails were disgusting, they were brown and they were so long that they were curled round. Like they were twisted, yeah, like I don't know how to like that twisted pasta. I don't know what the name is in Italian, but you know the pasta that's twisted, yeah? They were twisted like that, but then because they were so long, they had to twist them like if you roll up a fire hose or something, yeah? They were also twisted round that way into like a circle. And then they tied them together with string or something. Disgusting. Nasty. Some Indian guy had these crazy long nails. I remember that picture in the Guinness Book. And Flojo and Co were trying to go down that road of disgusting nails. Nasty. Oh, the Dark Crystal. Yep. I think they remade that, didn't they? The Dark Crystal. They remade it. Like in the past few years. With the Skeksis and all that. Yeah. The Magic Roundabout. Rainbow. Yep, the Magic Roundabout, though. That was trippy. Will-O-the-Wisp. That was trippy as well. All right, I'm going to bring this one to an end, folks. Nearly 3 hours in. Shout out to everybody for joining me. Shout out to all the super chats in particular. I appreciate all you guys, especially the trip down memory lane. I've been feeling very nostalgic lately, thinking about the 80s and playing all the 80s music. It started because they really like, on a random one, this is a Spanish-speaking country I'm in, they really like Red Wine by UB40. You wouldn't think that Spanish-speaking people that can't even understand what they're saying would like the song, but they really like, in Latin America, they really like Red Wine by UB40. And so I was going past one place and they were playing UB40 Red Wine. I was like, wow, that takes me back. Red wine. Crazy. Anyway, peeps, I'm out. Catch you on the next one. Until next time.